You're listening to Salford City Radio 94.4 FM.
You are indeed. You're listening to Salford City Radio 94.4 FM with your host, Jimmy Petruzzi, on the Friday Sports Show, bringing you all the news from around the world and the local area, of course, with the aim of increasing participation and awareness of different sports. We've got some fantastic guests lined up today. We're really, really fortunate to have world-class athletes, sports people, coaches, all walks of sport on the show. Today we have a fantastic guest who's going to give really, really fascinating insight into football and netball and a little bit of karate as well. We'll sort of touch base on what it's like to make our way as a youngster through the ranks of karate. So our guest today is Katie Thompson, who's the Northwest team leader at England Netball, and Anthony Godfrey, who is Academy Director of Salford City Academy. And he spent a considerable amount of time, I think it's 12 years, but we'll sort of confirm that, at Liverpool Football Club International Academy as a coaching resource manager. And he's got a lot to offer in the way of giving us an insight into what it's like to develop players and coach education amongst many of those things. So we're going to bounce around as we do in an informal way, and do feel free to email us on our social media page, the Friday Sports Show, with any questions, comments, otherwise. Always good to hear and see what you're all about. But let's sort of start with the grading. Luca, what was the grading like?
It was really good.
What did you like about the grading?
That you get a new belt and certificates.
Fantastic. And are you proud of yourself, the past? You worked really hard, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm really proud of myself.
Fantastic. You know, you did really, really well, and you deserved it. So, Katie, thanks for joining us on the show. It's really great for you to come on board and give us an insight into netball. We've seen England do well in netball of recent year. The Commonwealth game, it was a fantastic achievement, albeit you can give us more of an insight into how things are going on in the netball world. So thanks for coming on board the show, Katie. So what's your role? Tell us about your role in netball.
So my role, as well as being the Northwest team leader, I am the Netball Development Officer that covers all of Greater Manchester. So actually within my role, my main aims are to increase participation among kind of any ages. We've got products and programmes now to suit anyone from the age of 5 up to, say, 105 to take part within netball. So developing all those programmes around many different areas to kind of increase participation and provide lots of opportunity for anyone to get back on court in a kind of social environment, not necessarily that competitive one initially.
Yes, that's fantastic. And what inspired you to take the role, Katie? What was your inspiration? You sort of, I believe you did a course at university related to sport and management. Have you always been into sport yourself, or?
Yeah, so growing up through school, my school was quite a sporty school, which I was very lucky to be part of. So having kind of been that side of things, I did play a lot of sport myself. I wasn't very academically inclined growing up, whether that's through school or my GCSEs and things. Did well enough, but I think when I decided I wanted to go to uni, it was a matter of I was good at sport and I was okay at kind of the business side, so that's what led me to do a sports management degree. Having been on that degree, I'll be honest, when I was going through the 3 years, I wasn't actually sure where in the sport industry I kind of wanted to aim and end up. But then closer to the end of my degree, we kind of had different experiences, and then I realised I think that sports development side was where I wanted to go down that route. I've played netball all my life, and that is like my sport I do play. So obviously what a great opportunity when that role kind of came out, kind of down the pathway of the sport I love, but also that kind of development side and making a difference to other people's lives through sport and getting them physically active as well.
No, that's fantastic. And so you're obviously passionate about netball, and that's good for you to be involved. So I guess it's almost natural in terms of promoting it, and you're very passionate about it. So does that help, having been a netball player yourself? Has that been something that's been useful for you to sort of, in terms of passion? I mean, people say when if we're selling something, it's great, we really believe in the product. That's obviously from a commercial point of view. But does that really help you because you've been a participant yourself and really enjoy it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's probably quite cliche to say, but some days when I'm out and working, it doesn't actually feel like a job because it's something I'm so passionate about, the sport growing and providing lots of opportunities, that although it is my job, I just feel like it's something that I want to do because I'm so passionate about it. And you kind of go out your way a little bit further to make that difference and develop more kind of opportunities for people to take part. But I think also having that understanding of the sport in depth as well really does give you a boost, because I think you feel more confident talking to people about it, and people kind of believe in what you're talking about and think that you kind of know about the actual sport because it's something you're passionate about, really.
Absolutely. And I think that if one person takes up netball or gets involved as a result of listening to the program, then for me it's job done. But I'm sure a lot of people, as we sort of speak in more detail, will be inspired to at least consider getting involved in various levels. And our other guest, Anthony, who will bring into the conversation, works in a more established sport. You could say football is global in the sense that everywhere in the world knows football. I believe netball to be more of a Commonwealth-based sport, but I suppose with people like yourself at the helm, it will grow, and that's the idea. And tell us a bit about yourself, the work you've been doing at Seven Elite Academy. That's really interesting because we sort of spoke off air, and based in the US, and I believe you do programs in Africa too. But how did you sort of start working with Seven Elite Academy?
So basically I was approached back in 2017 regarding this kind of new venture in the US about a new kind of professional soccer academy that they wanted to kind of put in place in Salt Lake City in Utah. And it was, again, it's amazing where kind of the sport can take you. And I was actually at a coach conference as a guest speaker in LA, where I kind of met up with the people that had this kind of idea for this academy, and then we spoke for kind of many months because I wanted to kind of get a good feel for them, what their vision was, how they wanted to kind of execute their plans, and the purpose behind the whole idea. Because at that time I was working for Liverpool Football Club, and basically it was the vision of kind of just, the old cliche saying of trying to better the game within the state, within the country, using kind of different ways of the kind of techniques and kind of the coach education that was already maybe in place in their kind of remit, and maybe kind of focusing on player development through a different approach that's already been done in the US.
Yeah.
And that's where that all come about, and it was a project that was exciting for me because, as I said, I was with Liverpool for a long time, and that's my boyhood club. So as you can imagine, to me, that working for Liverpool at that time, and the people that I met, and again the development that I went through myself being part of that football club, it was special to me. But it came to a point in my life where I needed a new challenge for my own development and kind of personal skills and so on. And I just thought, if I don't do it now, Jimmy, I never will. I thought I was at that age and where I was within kind of me knowledge of the game, that I just needed something else, and I thought, why not? So it is a really interesting project. We've been up and running now for nearly 2.5 years. Like I said, started from scratch, so kind of just building everything from kind of zero. So, the foundation of a professional youth academy. So building a coaching team, building an infrastructure, building obviously a philosophy, a curriculum that we want to kind of implement throughout the age groups, our coach education system, our coach mentoring, our parent education, workshops. So there's a lot to go into it, and like I said, we've been up and running now for 2.5 years, and like you said, it has gone global now. So we are bringing programs here to the UK, and we've also took programs into Africa, in Tanzania.
Wow, that's amazing. It's really fascinating how football can be part of a community. It's more than the sport in that sense, and that's amazing stuff. And certainly your experience at Liverpool would have brought a lot to the party, so to speak, in terms of working for a club, one of the biggest clubs in the world with so much tradition, Liverpool for sure. And I remember a few years ago, I was over in America, in Florida. I was doing some coaching camps out there, and Roy Evans, who was an ex-Liverpool manager, was on delivering with us as well. And what a great man he is. And we sort of got into conversations, as you do, till the all hours about football in Liverpool and what it was like for him managing the club. I must admit, speaking to him at the time, and if he's listening, I think he does tune in now and again, I didn't think Liverpool, not to doubt Liverpool, but I felt with a lot of changes in the Premier League and investment at Chelsea, and we saw obviously City of recent years going to be tough to get back to that top again. But what it does show is that if you've got patience and back a manager and you sort of get the right infrastructure, what you can achieve. And from yourself, and there's probably no one better place to comment on that yourself. Obviously, you love the club and you're at the club from an international perspective for years. What do you think was being the ingredients, Anthony, in terms of Liverpool? How have they managed to get themselves back to? Well, I don't want to jinx them in winning the league. I mean, but I'm sure a lot of our listeners will be hoping that I do. But what's been the ingredient? I mean, it's sort of they won the European title and they're sort of strong in the league as well. And
yeah, I think there is pretty much one main ingredient, and that's Jurgen Klopp.
Yeah.
In terms of what he's done in a short space of time. In the last 4 years is extraordinary. To see kind of where Liverpool were 4 or 5 years ago, the squad that they have, to where it is now, it's astonishing. It's amazing. And I think the big thing for Jurgen Klopp as well, and I think many Liverpool supporters will kind of vouch for this and say the same thing, is he's not just an extraordinary coach. He's a fantastic person, but he also kind of gets the city. I think that's really important for kind of not just for Liverpool fans, but for any kind of club out there, that they do have someone at the helm, that it's really important for them to kind of know what that club's about, the city that it's in, the community that it's in, the people within the city, and having that connection. And for me, the way Jurgen Klopp kind of goes about his business, and the way kind of Liverpool play its football at this moment kind of epitomise what Liverpool, the city, is about in terms of like the working class, working hard to kind of find rewards, results, and so on. And again, I think even the way he comes across in the media, I don't think there's many out there in the media that can say a bad word about him. He's just a really likeable character, and I think he is definitely the main ingredient. You've got to give, of course, credit to the owners, because I think kind of any international owners that were coming into the Premier League, especially American owners, on the back of other US owners that have came in, they kind of had a bad reputation. And I think you've got to give a lot of credit to our owners in terms of what they've done for the club. They've backed the club. They've obviously, built on Anfield. They've supported the manager when needed and so on. I think there's a lot of factors, but you've got to give a lot of credit to Jurgen Klopp in terms of what he's done, the recruitment as well, in terms of the players that he's brought in. Exceptional, world-class talent, and it's
that's really interesting. You say, I think you made some really great points there. Really interesting points you've made there. What I would say, this is me being completely honest, a few years ago I was at a conference, and it was when Jurgen Klopp had sort of taken over, and I was speaking to sports scientists, conditioning coaches that were linked to, were working for Liverpool, and they were talking about the brand of football he wanted to play. I must admit, I thought, to play that sort of style of football, you're going to have to recruit. You talk about recruitment, you have to recruit players who are there and thereabout. From a training point of view, you can do so much physiologically with players. Obviously, might be just my opinion, you're limited with what you're working with. In terms of the recruitment's got to be key. One thing I have noticed, having watched Liverpool, just for coincidence, the last few years, for whatever reason, I've been involved in the media, and I've been to a few Liverpool games, not for Liverpool, for the teams that were playing against Liverpool. I've noticed the brand of football they play is the exact sentiment they said they were going to play years ago. That sort of fast style pressing. It's incredible how they can keep the intensity up for so long, and it really is phenomenal. And from your point of view, Anthony, where do you sort of see that in terms of playing that sort of intense, to give our listeners an idea of how hard it is, how much effort you've got to put into play at that tempo for 90 minutes, where teams go there and it's almost like they think, we're in for a game here. They're relentless.
Yeah, I think it's like for many kind of athletes, not just kind of footballers, when, let's say like kind of world-class athletes. We're not just talking about like football players, but we're talking about world-class athletes in all different sports. To kind of play the game and get the kind of accreditation of kind of being at the top of your game in whatever sport it is all about the preparation and the application from the coaching team, the sports science department, the players' attitude in kind of being the 24-hour athlete. So they only spend so many hours a day at the training ground. But again, what is that athlete doing at home? Nutrition, recovery, sleeping patterns, etc. Again, all these are massively, important in terms of, finding a way of playing at the highest level. So you talk about kind of Liverpool in terms of the way they play and so on. Again, those athletes have got to be doing all them things in order to be playing, obviously kind of that way. But again, they are the kind of, the manager's kind of vision of the way he wants to play. In terms of, because there was many questions when Jurgen Klopp first came in and wanted to play that kind of gegenpress, is what they called it, and there was many kind of doubters out there from a kind of sports science.
I hold my hands up, and I was one of them. To be fair,
the way he's playing, it's going to cause a lot of injuries. But I think again, in terms of having, your department having the right kind of resources, the sports science around it is, it's continuing to grow all the time.
Absolutely.
In terms of, what we find out from papers, researchers and so on. Again, it just, like I said, there was a lot of doubters out there, 4 years ago. But in terms of how the players actually played that game, it is down to application, attitude, and what you do.
It's like I was going to say the little things, but things like, I stand corrected, but my understanding is when he went at the club, he sort of forbidden any of the players to tap the sign, this Anfield sign, until they won something. And I think these might come across as like little things to some people, but for me they're big things because they show your intent. You're going in there and your intention. And it's a bit like the cycling, it's not too far away from here. They sort of changed the whole mindset. The ethos changed. It went away from, second best will do, or, it's okay to finish second. And I'm not suggesting it's not, but generally speaking, we're in it to be the best we can be. Sort of going back to netball now, and yourself, Katie, I know your role is your goal is to increase participation and awareness, but equally, is there sort of something deep down inside of you that would love to see England carry on success they've had, and how important it is that sort of you've got a successful England team, just like say Liverpool. You go to Liverpool, and obviously you got the blue half as well, but the young people aspire to be the next Gerrard, the next. We've seen that, and how important is it? And I mention that because where sort of netball came prominent to me in this country is I worked for Barry at the time, and Jill was the secretary, something along them lines. Neville and obviously Gary and played for United, and his brother Phil for Everton, but. Their sister Tracy, I believe, and she sort of raised the profile a bit because I think that sort of did raise. But how important is that England carry on succeeding to get the next generation of youngsters coming through?
Yeah, definitely. So I think as we've mentioned, I think our main big push where netball really took off, kind of where most people recognised it, was in 2018 at the Commonwealth Games, where we obviously had that amazing moment of getting that gold medal. England Netball never got anything above bronze before at that Commonwealth Games, so to come away with gold was like the best achievement any of us could have ever wanted and wished for. It was really incredible. I think the team's atmosphere and the way they worked together, and obviously with Tracy in particular, really pulled that team to get strength to strength. But I think it's quite obvious that it does work hand in hand, that having seen success, whether that's from obviously the girls themselves doing their job to get that gold medal, but then the media jumping on board, it really does work in hand with the participation. From the Commonwealth Games, we actually, I think it was straight after we got the gold medal, we had an increase of 2,000% traffic to our website of people logging on, basically, how can I find a session, where can I go and participate, how do I get back on court, which was obviously incredible. I think as an organisation we are one step ahead of a lot of others in the sense that we have these opportunities literally for anyone, as I think I mentioned earlier, age 5 to 105, to get on court at their game at their own pace. And that really is from a game which was our brand new product or programme we've got this year that came out called B Netball. So that's our brand new under 11 programme, which is really child centred. It's about the child first and then the netball comes second. So it's getting all those kind of fundamental skills. And then we have other programmes. Our longest running one is our Back to Netball programme, which we started in 2008, and we've had well over 100,000 ladies get back on court from that programme. And that it really is for anyone aged 16 plus who, doesn't matter what age, shape, size, height, as a lot of people think in netball, but you can physically get back on court in a social environment and just kind of exercise and do it at your own pace. And obviously with our fastest growing programme that's been walking netball, that again has opened the eyes of a completely different generation, really. We've got, I think, a couple of weeks ago, one of my colleagues had a 92-year-old lady come to the session. She was back on playing netball, which obviously for us as deliverers is incredible to see, but just seeing that excitement in their faces and what they get out of it. Because again, it's with netball and these kind of products and programmes that we run, it's not just about the physical side, it's that kind of social and mental well-being that runs alongside it. Thinking about walking netball in particular, you think about, a lot of people getting older, they can get really isolated from society. So having these kind of programmes in place, we kind of gives them another outlet of life to make new friends, get out the house, it might be. I think there was a story, one of our sessions we run in Stockport, we had the BBC Get Inspired team come down, and some of the information that, we see these ladies week on, week out, we have a laugh, have a joke with them. But some of the stories that came out from that, some of the ladies, they lost their husbands a couple of years ago, they're losing all their friends, and it's the only time of the week they come out of the house, see or speak to anyone in that whole week is when they come to that session. So knowing kind of the opportunities are out there for these people, it's just spreading that word for that, really. But then I think we got to also think about this summer we had the World Cup in the Northwest. It's actually in Liverpool that took place, which again was July. Luckily, it was amazing timing, really, having a home Netball World Cup following that success in the Commonwealth. Since then, I think we've had about 160,000 more women and girls take up the sport as a brand new sport or play more netball than they have done before, which again I think just kind of lightens up that we have, the success and seeing it on a world-class stage. It really does then working hand in hand and getting that participation and grow grassroots sport, really.
Absolutely, that's an interesting point you made there, and I think certainly the success of the Commonwealth game and in Australia netball is a big sport, it has been for a long time, and there is a pathway to professional there. At least last time I spoke to people involved in the game there, that was the case. But like all things, continuity is really important, and what we have seen in certainly in Australian sport is things filter off, and participation did increase, and it increased at a point of when there was a lot of frustration at not achieving, and talent ID programs came in place, and a lot of it came off the back of the Olympics in the 70s, where they just weren't winning anything, and thought, well, let's stop the Institute of Sport. But we've seen how quickly things can change, and now things are sort of on the up a little bit. But participation, not just in elite sport, but also in general, went down considerably. And obviously the Olympic Games were there in 2000, and there is a buzz. And I think what you do is really important, Katie, because we've seen how you sort of focus on the elite level. We sort of forget grassroots, we forget other people who could get involved and will benefit from there, and that has a knock-on effect too. I really do think that getting as many people involved in sport is really important. And from your point of view, okay, so it was a huge victory at the Commonwealth Games, obviously in Australia as well. It's a huge, to put that into context for our listeners, I would think that you got an overwhelming favourite going into the tournament, and to win gold was a huge achievement for England, absolutely. Do you think that having won that and at the World Championships, that sort of form was carried on, or why do you think it's gone the game since then?
I still think it's completely growing. All the time we're getting new people asking how they can get involved as well. I think not only obviously we're looking at participation, increasing that. I think it's a big push nationally with kind of the health industry pushing sport because there's that many inactive people. But then we obviously are looking at growing continuously our kind of officiating side and our coaching side, because grassroots level not only just grows in people getting on the court, but you need kind of the background of people, umpires and coaches to kind of keep developing those routes, because you need to start the players young a lot of the time to get them to then become our future England Netball Roses to then kind of grow. So with regards to the kind of performance pathway that we kind of run, we start at basically satellites with our counties and then it runs through with our franchises. So locally in Manchester, in the whole of the Northwest, we've got Manchester Thunder as our Super League team. So they do a lot of the selections through them, and then we have obviously our England Roses Academy and work their way up through there. I think it's really important to note that obviously as the national governing body, although we are the kind of highest attended female sport by a lot, we obviously rely on funding from Sport England, and as every other sport does. So with the likes of looking at football, who've got a lot more money, they're very commercially driven. Obviously we're trying to become more commercial as we go forward, but I think it's really important to note that although our players, we have got a kind of full-time programme in regards to looking how we can fund them through various different things, which obviously that funding helped us get the gold medal. But these, our athletes have full-time jobs. Some of them are lawyers, some of them doctors, so they have to do that alongside. They can't put every minute of every day into training and playing.
Absolutely.
So I think it's obviously credit to them for doing so well. But, it's how people, balance their kind of work lifestyle with their playing and the commitments with all that going forward.
And I think that's sort of one of the themes of the show, is to sort of send a message out to Sport England and the powers that be to keep funding going across all sports, because sport means a lot to the people in this country, and certainly in this area we see it. And you mentioned before, Andy, about the Liverpool and its working class roots, and around here as well. It's really working class, and it's a really, really working class area, and people, sport brings people together. What I find interesting, and I'll touch base with Katie on this again at some point, but I want to get more information on some of the programs we're running, is the umpires getting involved. And I interviewed a former premiership referee a few weeks ago, and I talked about how I think one thing football can learn is probably from netball. I stand corrected, but from what I've seen of netball, the umpires don't get as much abuse as the football referees do in that respect. And is that something that sort of is sort of from an early age, from that point of view, is that like an etiquette thing in netball, and sort of how the umpires are spoken to? Because we do see referees, I think, at least in my opinion, and certainly the sentiments of the premiership referee or former premiership referee I interviewed, we felt that sometimes referees come under a lot of scrutiny. They're just doing the best they can, especially the ones who are volunteering on a Sunday morning at a local football field. And is that something that sort of, I think we can learn from the likes of netball, and in terms of, is that something that sort of taught early in terms of the conduct towards umpires? Or
I think absolutely, and if we're thinking about it, probably works hand in hand with actually looking at our new B Netball programme, because though obviously we're looking at different philosophies within that, and one of them actually is respect. So obviously now it kind of introduces that as a thing. So we're not, with B Netball, we're not just achieving people for winning and those kind of, it's about the kind of teamwork skills, the respect, all of that. So that will obviously come in. I think with netball obviously being such a fast-paced game, our umpires are under a lot of pressure. They've got a split second to make that decision as that ball moves so quickly down court. But I think it also comes back to having, looking at our England Netball Roses as role models. I think we obviously know some stuff in the press with football and other sports, but it could be in netball as well. But, young girls are looking and inspiring to these people. So if, our kind of top-level Roses are, having any discretion with the umpires, then what does that teach to kind of our young, future generation?
Absolutely. That's a great point. And sort of elaborating on that, for me, certainly football, and in women's football, I don't know what your take is on it yourself, Andy, but I felt that there's always an opportunity missed where the tournament comes along and there's media, but then it kind of filters off. And I think it's important to carry on, keep the coverage going, and keep the momentum going in terms of encouraging young people, young men and women to keep on and being involved. Do you have experience yourself, Anthony, like the women's football game, or?
Yes. So I obviously throughout my time at Liverpool Football Club, it was all boys.
Yeah.
And then when I picked up this position at Salford Elite Academy, which was all obviously in the US, the game over there, especially the youth game in particular, it is mainly driven by the girls, the power of the girls game, and where that currently is. Of course, the US are current world champions, got some fantastic role models, and there's a lot of inspiration, driven from the US women's team right down to the younger generation, and the girls game in the US from a youth perspective has been really, really strong, for decades really. So when I have kind of moved jobs and gone to the US, that was definitely a learning curve for me to kind of study that game more, to be more educated around kind of girls player profiles, as again, from a sports science point of view as well, because girls grow different than the boys, so I need to kind of understand maybe how their bodies work physically, how they grow, because again, all I've ever known is kind of how boys grow. So I've had to kind of really put myself in kind of in different kind of waters to understand the girls game differently from all different kind of parts, technically, tactically, physically, socially. But like I said, I've been there for 2 years now, and I've really kind of attached myself strongly to the girls game, and seeing where it is in the US and to see where it is here at the UK, and seeing the stuff that they are doing in the UK in trying to grow the game. The FA are really, trying to push it. The local county FAs are, I know, kind of, really trying to support the growth of the girls game. And there's different ways of kind of access to funding to kind of support the girls and kind of getting training, kits, etc., trying to get clubs up and running. So to kind of see what the UK are trying to do in terms of increased participation in the girls' game is really pleasing to see, because seeing where it is at the US, and I'll probably say that they're probably 10 years ahead.
Yes, that's a good point.
In the youth girls' game, to see what the results that they're getting from it is kind of giving me, from a UK point of view, a lot of optimism to see what's currently going on here, to say, you know what, in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, actually England could be right up there. To see where they are now as a national team, they were really close this year. They were beaten by the champions, very narrowly beaten. Again, there was a lot of inspiration from the England team filtered down to the younger generation, and the strength of the Women's Premier League, the players that are kind of coming into that league as well, which is only strengthening it. That's only going to, again, cause a bigger effect to the younger generation, Jimmy.
Yeah, it's interesting you say, and for me, one of the things that sort of is interesting is that the college system in the USA, the university system, it's a very strong competitive arena. It really is, and I think that for me, in my experience of working in the USA, is a huge thing. I mean, with the greatest respect, there's some great universities in the UK, and I've been to university here, a few different ones, and they're fantastic educational establishments, and certainly in sport, they take pride in their sport. But the reality is that we're probably still nowhere near the USA, and in netball was a sport played in the American college system. You'd probably be getting 10, 20,000 people coming along to watch, and certainly in the soccer, as they call it there for the women's, you get huge crowds, and that makes a big difference, I think, for me, to have like a pyramid, so to speak, almost like a place you can sort of you can sort of learn as well. It's a safety net, because I always encourage people who miss out on a scholarship in the UK in football to say, do consider scholarship in America, say if they don't get a professional contract. And the reason being is you get an education out there, but equally you can go into the draft, or you can come back like some players have done and play really well. What's the situation with, say, netball at universities here? Katie, you're probably the best place to answer that with yourself, going to Manchester Met, which I respect immensely, by the way, as university. They're a great university, have done a lot of good research. But how does things work at university in the UK for sports like netball?
So again, like every university, as you know, of different levels of where we play and what leagues and things. It's obviously because it is the biggest female sport. The majority, I would say I hope all, the majority do offer netball as one of their sports. So when I was at university, I was actually chair of the netball club while I was there. So I did a lot of the background things to help, it wasn't just down to me, but help the running and just, the daily jobs and things that needed doing. So I think when it goes to university, I think we have a lot of people trial every year. So it goes down to most universities, there are trials. From my own experience of being at Manchester Met, we had, you get, don't quote me on this, hundreds of girls basically come for trials. At the time when I was there, we only had 5 teams. We had existing year groups there, so I think we only had 20 places to offer at the university. Wow. So obviously you've got the demand of people wanting to play the netball, but as the competitive teams, at the time when I was there for 20-ish spaces, obviously we've known for years and years that is quite a big drop-off rate then of where people do fall out the sport. However, again, we have another programme which works with the universities, our University Netball Officer programme, which a lot of universities take on board, and we kind of assign someone as a volunteer in their own time to kind of grow the participation of netball within the universities, obviously intramurally, so looking at, it could be just different sessions of participation where people come and have a go weekly in the weekly sessions. And then we do offer that competition element that we organise our national shots competition where the universities who are part of our university netball programme come together and have that competitive university against university feel. Obviously at the leagues at university we play, most people play in the Bucks leagues, so the British College University Sport Leagues, where again they are completely, you could be playing at Prem level or again at just one of the lower level leagues, but it just offers that competition element for anyone who wants it. But then that's where again we come on board and kind of offer that participation route to kind of keep people involved within the sport while they're at university, and let them have that opportunity to carry on playing kind of in their own free time.
No, that's really interesting stuff. I'm really informative. I wasn't aware of that, and I'm sure many listeners weren't either. And that's really interesting information, because obviously, from the outside looking in, I certainly wasn't aware you had such a high turnout for trials and such a rigorous selection protocol. So you have to be a certain level. What I would say, listening in and speaking to you guys, it's been really fascinating. And what I would say, in sort of my opinion, and we sort of look at the likes of Liverpool Football Club and some of the young players coming through the team now, phenomenal players. Now, really phenomenal players that are coming through the system at the moment. But one thing about football, if we look at football, or soccer as they call it in America, for me, it may have changed. Anthony will probably correct me if I'm wrong. In my experience, it tended to be more of a middle-class sport, and it's seen as a non-intrusive sport from an injury point of view. And I think that's one of the reasons perhaps the men's game there hasn't gone as far as it should. And I went to MLS game last year. The standard was okay. I spoke to someone who plays in MLS recently, and he sort of seems to think that MLS is about Championship, Premier League level. I'm a little bit, I'm not sure about that, type thing. I suppose he would say that, but the thing is for me, one thing it does lack is I don't know the way things are going in netball, but certainly in America and Australia in football, what's happening is, and other sports, you need to have money to participate as a young person. And when I go and I work in Australia, and I go there pretty much every year, and I sort of help out on sporting programs, I'm quite disappointed sometimes to see that, and I can't speak for every area there, because some might be different, but the ones I've sort of spoken, you need money to join. It's a lot of money. It does isolate the general working class person. Now, this is in some respects similar to America. For me, football in the UK, you pick up a ball, you put couple of jumpers out there. If you're good enough, you'll get there. And I don't know. I mean, you guys are doing tremendous work in netball. But from your point of view, do you see that as a barrier, and in terms of possibly in other sports? And we'll get to what your take is on netball. But where do you see that? Is that any sort of truth in that? Do you think that money is a barrier for people?
There's a lot of truth in that, Jimmy, unfortunately, especially in the USA, where the youth game is pretty much driven by the pay-to-play model. Because of that model, because it's been there for so many years, decades, shall we say, it's going through, I think, a bit of the crisis of it's gone too far. How do they kind of maybe make the sport, like you said, where it's going back to the urban roots? That's where the game, for us, for around Europe, South America, Africa, that's where the kind of game is come from the street. Like you said, you get your ball, you put your jumpers down, you find a couple of branches in the park, you put them in, you make your goal, and there you are, 10 of your friends, younger, older, different people, playing the game. Unfortunately, the pay-to-play model has a huge barrier, because you touched on it. There's, not everyone's got the money. So from my experience, especially in the US, a lot of your better players come from the Hispanic communities. In them communities, a lot of them may not be able to afford some of the prices that you've got to pay to play football in the US. And therefore, there's a lot of talent that's being missed. There's a lot of talent that's not being worked with, and so what's happening with that talent? It's kind of just wasting away, because they're not getting obviously the opportunity. Then the opportunity to kind of meet exposure, the exposure then to kind of maybe be picked up from kind of professional academies to kind of get that coaching that they need to kind of progress to maybe one day be a really, really good professional player.
It's about sports for all, I think, and certainly from the point of view, we've seen the likes of the Williams sisters rise and they've dominated tennis for so long, and I've sort of held a view in tennis, and I profess to be a tennis expert. I did a bit of conditioning work for some of the players many years ago, going back a long way, and I felt at that point it wasn't accessible. It may have changed now to the general working class person, and I think until we go into urbanised areas and really promote the game and get investment for many sports. Now, you're sort of, I don't understand, the netball model, and this will be really enlightening to our listeners and myself. And what's it like in netball? I mean, is there scope for going into urban areas and getting the young people, from Salford, Swinton, and all these areas that wouldn't necessarily be able to, afford to hire out, say, a netball court? What's happening with that? Katie, to put you on the spot.
No, that's fine. So I think one of our things in my role, and all the other county netball development officers, we do look at deprived areas and deprived wards as a kind of focus for providing opportunity to get more people active and involved. I think we obviously with our programmes we try and look at different areas where we can put opportunities on, and it might be that people will pay £4 or maybe less depending on what area it is. They come as and when they wish to a session. It's not something they have to sign up to physically for a block of 12 for every, if you can't attend a specific session, you don't have to pay all that. But obviously I think you also think about there are grants out there, so it could be for a new club setting up in a specific area. Obviously we know the cost of setting up a club, it's not necessarily always the cheapest. It can be depending on what you are looking at receiving, but there are obviously always opportunities to look for funding out there. But I think it also goes down to when you're looking at opportunity to kind of progress within the sport, we have some absolutely incredible volunteers within our sport. We will put hands up when we do rely on them. They are incredible. They spend so much of their time helping the sport. And if I'm thinking in the kind of county, we have our county netball associations, but then every region has a regional management board who, again, are all volunteers. But within those, there are pots of money, and that is come from membership. So, as most national governing bodies do, we have a membership, which obviously provides many things such as discounts. We'll look after some safeguarding things, products, procedures. Our time is invested in these people, and I think when we look at the membership cost, it is, I would personally say, relatively small compared to some other governing bodies. But when people might start questioning it, I think what you have to think about is you invest your money in the national governing body of England Netball, but then we invest back in yourselves.
Absolutely,
in the sense of setting new things up, creating further opportunities to then keep on growing that sport and, getting that sport going higher and more successful in kind of all levels.
No, absolutely. One thing that strikes me about the work that you do, Katie, you're really passionate about that, and you guys are doing it it's sort of touching lives across a broad range of areas. And I think for me there is always this sort of danger of sort of isolating grassroots and people in general. For me, sport's not just about being elite, great. More than anyone, I love to see people do well and win world championships and stuff. It's fantastic. But equally, I think that you touched on something really, really important there when you mentioned, say, for example, a widowed person, and what price can you put on someone getting out and obviously life is a bit more. There's no easy solutions to sort of complexities, but in saying that if someone can get out there and socialise and be active and walking netball, like walking football, it's non-intrusive. It's very unlikely someone's going to slide in and do a big tackle and you're out for 6 weeks type thing. So it's great in the sense that it has a social impact. So for me, it's always about people listening to this show and sort of taking on board, the movers and the shakers of this world in terms of funding. And I know it's not a bottomless pit. I know obviously a lot of sports require funding, but equally the money goes a long way in the sense that prevention is better than cure, to use a term, in the sense that the social avoidance and the implications of that in terms of offering a program and investing in it to get people out, get people confident, motivated, goes a long way. So it's hard to measure the return if they sort of invest. And we did a program years ago in the Barrie area, and we had funding of various sources, and it was to get young people involved in football. Had massive implications in the sense that not just did people, and a couple of young people, one of them got a YT at Sheffield United, and a few of them got contracts in Hungary, and some, but also more importantly, they were off the street, they were doing something, they were active. While they were doing that, they felt a sense of belonging, a sense of togetherness. And when I say prevention is better than cure, I don't mean that loosely. I mean in the sense that, okay, why wait? Why not sort of start and get things going? And if you can really help people socially get out and enjoy themselves, it might not be for everybody. That's really important. And you mentioned funding, Katie. I mean, how obviously Sport England's involved in funding, but the lottery's been great. What are some of the things that you guys need to do? I'm not sure, if you're aware of, you've got the information, but to get funding, is it sort of, what are there bodies out there? What's the... Yeah,
absolutely. So obviously, besides our main source of funding from Sport England, which obviously we're grateful for to keep receiving that to enable us to move forward, but there are several pots of kind of smaller funds which community groups could apply for, and our local clubs could apply for. Again, they are run on volunteers, so it could be for things for getting equipment, or for providing opportunities for people to go on more courses to develop themselves and their skills. But I think for people to refer to, I think our Greater Sport, which is our county sports partnership, or now called Active Partnership, across Greater Manchester, is a fantastic body where they have sources of funding from loads of different areas. So it could be from smaller companies. I think One Stop did some funding at some point. It could be loads of smaller companies will put funding in for specific things, but there are so many to access depending on what you're looking for. Obviously, with netball specifically, your county netball development officer, such as myself or whoever that may be in the counties, we are there to support them through that application process. Use us to back you up and hopefully get some funding to keep on being able to not only grow but sustain your club or whatever it may be, or community group at the moment.
And that's really interesting stuff. It's really informative. And from your own point of view, Katie, where do you sort of, if you had like a wish list, the hypothetical question, a magic wand, where do you want to see it yourselves? What's your vision for netball in terms of your involvement and generally, where do you sort of see the vision? If that's sort of not too much of an abstract question to ask, but
I think for netball itself, I think as an organisation, obviously we would love to keep having the media increase their media coverage on us. I think following on from the Commonwealth success, I think that's when most people realise netball's now on the map as such. And we got coverage from various national newspapers, news, TV, whatever that may be.
The team of the year.
That's what I say. So obviously from that successful moment, we got 2 awards at the Sports Personality of the Year awards last year, 2018, which was obviously for us incredible. We've never probably been on that list.
Thoroughly deserved, by the way.
Yes, so we got for both the Team of the Year as well as the Moment of the Year, which obviously I'll personally say I think we really deserved. But
no, absolutely.
And I think that, not only was it those 2 awards, we've got so many different awards last year and we've received more awards this year. So again, that's highlighting the way the sport's growing. I think we'll all admit our long-term dream would be that the sport would be in the Olympics. But however, at the moment, the World Cup is our Olympics and the Commonwealth, and that's where we aspire to be. I think looking forward, people do ask about the Olympics quite often, and I think it's... be honest, there's not enough nations that play the sport. So obviously as a governing body, we are working with various other countries' governing bodies to try and bring these nations, to get them on board and to kind of develop the sport in, across different nations. I think our previous CEO, Joe Adams, had been out over in Africa nations developing the sport again at grassroots level and trying to increase it that way. So we are working hard to do that. But I think it's just, for us, it's to keep the sport growing, keep people taking part, but also becoming fans. I think having that success of the World Cup, Commonwealth, and people just talking about netball more. We've actually got our Vitality Netball Nations Cup happening in January, and it's the first time ever we've sold 3 out of 4 events completely sold out before the event, and there's only a few tickets remaining for the last one in Birmingham. But again, that just shows people are wanting to watch the sport and kind of become a fan and go and actually see it. Again, that's with, I think, Manchester Thunder, as I mentioned before, it's our local Super League team. The venue they've had to move to increase capacity of spectators, which again is only a good thing for us to show people are more aware of it and wanting to actually go and watch it. And I think, obviously, being a female sport, it is young girls having those role models. I think a lot of the time, stereotypically speaking, a lot of young boys, role models, probably a sports person. And a couple of years ago, I'd say a lot of young girls, it would be a celebrity or some social media person.
Absolutely, yeah.
But however, you'd ask young girls now and they actually aspire to be these England Netball Roses or the Manchester Thunder players, which is obviously just shows that success and people talking about that sport.
Absolutely. And sort of in terms of contact, are there details our listeners who, if they're sort of interested in being a volunteer, an umpire, a participant, where can they sort of get in touch? Katie, is there like a website they can go to?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go on the England Netball website, there are several different drop-down tabs to kind of get involved, and for things within Greater Manchester, anything within the county. My details on there is Katie Thompson. You can find my details on there, and obviously feel free to contact me directly, and I can just kind of push you in the right direction of wherever that may be.
No, absolutely, and certainly netball's well placed with people like yourself with so much enthusiasm involved. I have every confidence that the more people like yourself that are involved in sport, the better. Absolutely. Anthony, yourself, I mean, what's the next steps for you? It's you're the academy director now of the 7 Elite Academy, and you've got a vast experience of working at one of the greatest football clubs. You'll probably say it's the greatest football club in the world. But what's next for you? It's an incredible journey yourself.
I think so. With our obviously academy, within the States, they've got a future event coming up in 2026 in the World Cup. So, part of our kind of objective, and we've got to put there as a professional youth academy that we've got to maybe try and aim to kind of develop our players potentially good enough to maybe have a shot around that. So again, so kind of, connecting the dots, maybe coming backwards on that one is how do we develop them players? Well, we've got to really kind of develop them good enough to be competing with to get in the youth national teams that way. So that is one of our targets, objectives for the academy in the US. Here in the UK, our coaching program here is supporting grassroots. So we bring our kind of curriculum, our philosophy, but probably the most important kind of pillar, if you want to say, is the kind of the coach education and coach mentoring around the grassroots coaches. Now, we as an academy, we have our kind of our own values, our own curriculum, our own way of kind of coaching. So what we kind of offer here in the UK is we look to support grassroots teams, and a lot of those grassroots teams, let's just say from a nation stat, 90% of them coaches are the parent coach. They've got a child in that team. Now, with me still kind of really close and connected with the grassroots here, as me son plays it, he's 13, he's been playing it, ever since I think he was 5. So I've still kind of kept myself really, really close to grassroots, and what I've seen, and I also was a grassroots coach before the Liverpool days as well, but what I've seen like nowadays is there's a lot more pressure in grassroots. There's a lot more expectations. Absolutely. And a lot of parents forget, these coaches are volunteer coaches.
Yes, absolutely.
And as they get older, let's say under 14s, 13s, so on, 15s, a lot of the parents on the sidelines, I think, start to have more of an opinion on what the coach is not or not doing. And you kind of come across and you hear these things, Jimmy, where you see, why hasn't this coach not done this? Why is that coach, can't they see this happening in the game?
Yeah, absolutely.
And my biggest kind of question back to them is, when was the last time you went up to that coach and say, what is it that we can do to support you?
Absolutely.
Do you need any funding to kind of go on your next coaching badge, whatever? Yeah. So that's where we come in as 7 Elite and myself to kind of support these parent coaches. Because they do a great thing and we forget. Yeah. They're giving up, potentially work time, family time. Absolutely. To do this great thing. So that's what we're here to support them.
No, that's fantastic. No, that's a great point, and that's an area we could do another show on its own, and we've sort of mentioned that with other coaches as well. Mindful of time, it's gone so quick. It's unbelievable how fast the show's gone, and we could have gone on for all day, really. It's been really great of you guys to join us. Anthony Godfrey of the the Academy Director of the 7 Academy. Great of him to join us with a vast amount of experience and that he has in coaching. Katie Thompson as well, Northwest team leader, England Netball. Really, really incredible insights. Thanks to all the listeners, and always, for tuning in. Salford City Radio. And thank you to Luca in the background there. He's been a good boy as well. So you're listening to Salford City Radio, 94.4 FM, the Friday Sports Show. Your host, Jimmy Petruzzi. Have a fantastic weekend, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Until next time, speak to you then. Bye.